Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and our ongoing study in Paul's letter to the Colossians. We're going to take a look at 1:13 through 16, and this lesson is the theme lesson to the entire letter to the Colossians. These four verses define the theme of the entire letter. These four verses go to the heart of Paul's theology. These four verses go to the heart of Christology for any conservative believing denomination. These four verses go to the core of Christianity for the Southern Baptist Convention, I can tell you that. They speak directly to the Christology of the Southern Baptist Convention, of which I am a part. So let's go to the text in block 1 and get started here. For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption and the forgiveness of sins. The Son is the image of the invisible God. He is the firstborn over all creation. He is the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him, and all things have been created for him. Very powerful 4 verses, 13 through 16, chapter 1. Let's go to block 2 and take a look at the pillar commentary on a very, very powerful verses that support a high Christology for the faith. What our inheritance involves. 1. Rescue and transfer. Ruomai, to rescue from danger and destruction. Methistome, to move out of place, to transfer. In other words, to rescue by transference. There could be a reference here to Exodus 6 through 8, the act of God bringing the Israelites out of the yoke of the Egyptians and leading them to the promised land as an inheritance. That could be one reference that Paul had in mind. That could be one possibility. Or perhaps Paul could be thinking of the Israelites being brought back out of their 70-year Babylonian exile. Or Paul could be thinking of the wisdom literature. I kind of lean this way. Psalm 107, 6 and 7. They cried unto the Lord, and he delivered them and led them forth that they might go to a city of habitation. In 107:14, he brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death. The ultimate rescue is spiritual redemption. The ultimate rescue is spiritual redemption from sin through Christ and Christ alone. So block 2, note 2, we have redemption, verse 14. The Greek word for redemption is apolutros, or apolutrosis, apo from, litrao, redeem, to be redeemed from slavery to sin. It means to be repurchased. To repurchase that which was previously lost. Also, cross-reference Luke 21:28. Redemption draws near. I like that cross-reference. I like that cross-reference in Luke. Redemption draws near. Redemption draws near. And I think that applies here because it's all about we do not ascend to our redemption. We do not ascend to God. No, our Redeemer descends and draws near to us. Paul switches to the first person plural we in these verses instead of a previous you. Christ has redeemed us from our slavery to sin. We have been redeemed because our Redeemer descended to us as an act of grace to redeem us from slavery to sin. Let's go on to block 3 and take a look at the theme of the letter and basically the heart of the gospel according to Paul. This is the basis for our high Christology. Verses 15 and 16. The Son is the image of the invisible God. Icon to theou, a mirror-like representative, a direct correspondence to God, the image and likeness of God. This is the scriptural basis for our belief in a high Christology. And I'm a member of the Southern Baptist Convention, and we have a very, very high Christology. That's one of the reasons I prefer to be a part of the Southern Baptist Convention. I think the Scripture testifies to a very high Christology. It is the critical basis for the entire letter to the Colossians. The focal point of reality is Paul's Christology. Paul strings together assertions about Christ. Christ is the firstborn of all creation, prototokos. Protos, first. Tikta, to bring forth. He is the one who God brings forth first. We have been taken up into the kingdom of the Son. We have been taken up into the history of Christ. I affirm that with all my heart, with all my mind. We have been taken up into the kingdom of the Son, and we have been taken up into the very history of Christ. Also, you've heard me mention Philippians 2 before, so let's go to Philippians 2, and specifically Philippians 2:6, who, Christ, being in the form of God, morphe theou, the outward expression of inner substance. Jesus Christ is the outward expression of the inner substance of the ousia essence of the triune Godhead. Jesus Christ is the outward expression of the inner substance, or the ousia substance, if you want to go to the Greek, of the Godhead. The very outward expression of the essence of the Godhead. Now, block 3, note 2, this is a theology from Paul to combat false teachers. It is a Pauline theology to combat against Gnosticism. In him, all things were created. This Christology serves the purpose of setting forth Christ as the exclusive instrument through which God created all things. Emphasis is placed on the supremacy of Christ. Christ is none other than the Lord of the universe. Jesus is included in the unique identity of God of Jewish monotheism. And to wrap up here, I just want to go back to 2:1 and take a look at that, what our inheritance involves. Rescue and transfer. And Paul uses ruamai. We've been rescued from danger. We've been rescued from destruction. We've been moved out of place and transferred. It's a rescue by transference. And Paul could be thinking of Exodus, or he could be thinking of the return from the Babylonian exile. But I prefer to think that Paul is thinking of the wisdom literature. I think Paul, remember, Paul did his graduate school where? Under Gamaliel. He went to he did grad school. He got his master's degree. I call it that, but he did grad school under Gamaliel. And he was such a brilliant student that Gamaliel was going to recommend Paul to the Sanhedrin. Gamaliel was going to recommend Paul to the Sanhedrin. Brilliant, brilliant student who studied under Gamaliel. And Paul was very familiar with the wisdom literature. I think Paul was thinking of Psalm 107. They cried unto the Lord, and he delivered them, led them forth, that they might go to a city of habitation. He brought them out of darkness. He brought them out of the shadow of death. Christ has delivered me, Christ has delivered us out of the shadow of death. Physical death and spiritual death. And I say both because in John chapter 6, Christ says, I am the bread of life come down from heaven. Whoever feeds on this bread shall never die. I am the bread of life come down from heaven. Whoever feeds on this bread shall never die. And I believe that. I believe in the authority of Scripture, and I believe John chapter 6. But it refers to physical death and spiritual death. Both are addressed here. They both apply. 107, Psalm 107:14, he brought them out of darkness. He brought them out of the shadow of death. The ultimate rescue is spiritual redemption from sin through Christ. This is about spiritual redemption from sin through Christ. Very, very powerful. And then we look at that word redemption, and 2:2, it is apolutrosis, apo, from, litrao, to redeem. We've been redeemed from the slavery to sin. We've been repurchased because we were previously lost. And then I love the reference, Luke 21:28. Redemption has drawn near. I did not ascend to redemption. You didn't either. None of us ever ascended to redemption. None of us ever ascended to God. No. The Redeemer descends and draws near to us. He draws near to us every day, all the time. Christ in his Spirit draws near to us. So I love that reference to Luke 21:28. Redemption draws near. I believe that every day. Redemption is drawing near. We live as eschatological selves. Our life is a life of living as an eschatological self. We live as those who anticipate the eschaton. It wasn't just the first century Christians. It wasn't just the first century Christians who anticipated the return of Christ. No, we today are to live eschatological lives. We are to anticipate the coming parousia, which simply means the coming of Christ. We are to live eschatological lives. We are to anticipate in our day, in the living out of our day, in every mundane aspect of our day, we are to anticipate the parousia. That was something I learned from Jürgen Moltmann, that we are eschatological selves, eschatological Christians. Our life is a forward anticipating life, a forward anticipation of the coming parousia. Every day, every moment, all the time, through never-ending meditation, we anticipate the parousia. Just as strongly, if not even more strongly, than the first century Christians did. We anticipate the coming parousia even more strongly than the first century Christians. That is absolutely the truth. We will close out by reading the text 15 and 16. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and have been created for him. That's going to wrap up a very, very powerful Colossians 1:13 through 16, the very heart of our high Christology.